Welcome into episode 294 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue, and once again from beautiful Sunrise, Florida, although probably the Tampa area now, is Scott McLaughlin.
Also
It
not
hasn't been
beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah, I got blessed with clouds and rain my last 48 hours in Florida. So
we thought he was gonna come back with a sunburn, but it's not happening. It's not.
no.
Because I saw the pictures from the Bruins like showing up to the rink yesterday, and it looked like a torrential downpour. And I'm like, Scott's not.
Yesterday was crazy. So like I got back here to the Tampa area like mid-afternoon, spent some time at my grandfather's, and then drove into the game. And I know Boston doesn't do well with rain traffic wise either, but Tampa traffic when it's downpouring, it was like people are barely moving. It was bad. It's normally a half hour from my grandfather's into Tampa, and it took me like an hour 20.
Yeah, unfortunately, Scott,
Yikes.
you're there when the weather for some reason is shit, because it's not like if it's a summertime, you expect the rain in Florida, the showers, but Florida is supposed to be like really nice from January or actually the fall through like April, May.
Yeah,
my time in Sunrise was nice, and I between morning skate and the game on Tuesday, I got over to Fort Lauderdale, so at least a little beach time. Got to see the ocean at least, but yeah, that was nice. I was just getting back to Tampa. It's been crap here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I lived in North Carolina, it was beautiful starting like the first week of February on until, and then I would come back home for usually the end of April. And then be freezing and not happy that I left. But yeah, no, that stinks. You didn't get the right weather, Scott. We don't feel all that bad for you because it's also raining here and colder. So
we expect that here. We expect that here, Yeah. Unfortunately, he was going down there for the sun and, in any event. So quick Florida trip for the Bruins. They got the Panthers. Then they had Tampa Bay on a back-to-back. Obviously not to bury the lead. They go 1-1 in that 2-game sample size. So lots to get to. Let's throw it right to you guys for the opening shifts.
Sure, I'll go first. I thought, we're gonna definitely get into the Florida game more. I thought that was the more interesting of these two games, quite frankly. But there was an interesting development on Wednesday, and that was that Jim Montgomery elected to split up the Hampus Lindholm Brendan Carlo pairing. He put Lindholm with Andrew Peeke, Carlo with Parker Wotherspoon. And before the game, he explained it as basically just experimenting. He said he just wanted to see, who might have chemistry with each other, try some different things. I think that was the friendly explanation, because I also think part of it is that the Lindholm-Carlo pairing had been struggling recently. In the 4 games prior to Tampa, they had been on the ice for 5 goals against and 0-4, which is just not what you expect from that pairing. So maybe, kind of give them a game apart, possibly hope they find their game individually, or, I think we all expect him to put Lindholm and Carlo back together, probably as early as Saturday, but tried to shake things up. I thought the results weren't great. Both of those new pairings were on the ice for a goal against. I thought Lindholm and Peeke at least had some offensive zone time, pretty good analytics, possession numbers, all that. Carlo Wotherspoon pairing, I thought, really struggled. They were also out there for what would have been a second goal against had it not been called back for offsides. And that's kind of interesting because Wotherspoon and Carlo have played together a little bit early in the season, not much, but that wasn't a totally new pairing, and they just really struggled. I also found it interesting that when Montgomery decided to split up Lindholm and Carlo, it was mixing them in with third pairing guys and not loading up Lindholm and McAvoy together, which probably would have been the way I would have gone. Give that. If you're going to give anything a little bit of a look before the playoffs, give that a look and kind of know what you have there if you decide maybe you want to, load up that top pairing at some point. But yeah, so just found that interesting. So that's my opening shift.
Yeah, and mine has to do with someone else that was on the ice for, I know, at least one goal. The very first goal by Chafee in the Tampa Bay game. James Van Riemsdyk just lost Chafee in coverage, and it my opening shift is just what's going on with him, right? We talked about it in our mailbag. We got a lot of mailbag questions about him. Is it still illness? What is it? Well, either way, he hasn't been playing very fast. He hasn't been where he needs to be on the ice. And then he immediately takes a penalty after the goal against to start the Tampa game, and it was a really rough start to that game for him. He didn't even play in the Florida game. He was a scratch again, and then he comes in, does not play well, in my opinion, in the Tampa game, and it kind of just leaves that question out on the table that we were getting in the mailbag and throughout, this stretch where he has been sick and not playing well. Just what's going on with him, and is this a sign of fatigue? Is it illness? Is it just a slump? Is it like what's going on with him? It remains to be seen, really. We can only find out through a larger sample size whether or not it's coming out of this illness that's the reason or what. And also the main question we were getting about him is, should he be healthy scratched for the playoffs? So we'll get more into that as well, because Lauko definitely has more energy right now. I think you could say the skill set's not what JVR brings, and Lauko's not going to be playing on the first power play unit or anything like that, which is what JVR brings when he's playing at the top of the game. But right now, first and foremost, the energy level isn't there, and you need a higher energy level from everyone in the playoffs.
It's a really good point, Bridget. He needs to do better when he gets his opportunities. Obviously, he's been sick, he's been hurt. It's kind of the perfect storm. But at the end of the day, if the playoffs come around and he's not a net positive player for you, there's also a guy named Patrick Maroon who hasn't gotten a sniff yet because of injury, and he's kind of penciled in on the fourth line. And I think we kind of saw the last couple of games why he could bring some value in the playoffs. But if he goes down to if he's in a fourth line role, Justin Brazeau has not been playing like a fourth liner. So, I could see a scenario where JVR potentially loses a top 9 role to Brazeau if Maroon is on the fourth line or something like that, even before Lauko gets in. But definitely more meat on that bone and more to discuss. So the game against Tampa Bay, it's the second of a back-to-back. Tampa's fresh. It's a tough situation for the Bruins to be in, especially with how demanding the game was against Florida. Now, do I feel bad? No, that's going to be what the playoffs are going to entail, is grueling games with an unfavorable schedule at times. So tough luck, get used to it. But I wanted to focus on that Florida game because I do think that it was one of their better showings of the year. It comes on the heels of public embarrassment and ridicule from Jim Montgomery getting skated in their last practice due to not being ready to practice on time after some not so great games. And on top of that, you give up a goal in the first minute of the game against Florida, and it's like, man, things could have gone south. And I don't love the fact they give up that goal that early, especially that McAvoy-Grzelcyk pairing. It rubbed me the wrong way, though they made up for it later in the game. But in any event, they get down early, and literally and figuratively all night they just fought back, and until they ended up getting a 4-3 win in regulation. And you had different guys stepping up, going outside their comfort zone. Lindholm getting in his first career fight, if you want to call it that. Marchand punching up in a fight. And then you had your top guys.
And they called that roughing.
Yeah.
Like the one that was a fight, they called roughing, and the one that was roughing, they called a fight. It was Lindholm did not want to fight. I'm just gonna say his gloves stayed on the whole time.
He did kind of set up for himself, though. I think he did throw that first punch. And
but with the gloves on,
sure,
is roughing, not a fight. So,
but something you wouldn't really see him do in general. But he kind of got pushed, and obviously he's going to get tuned up by Sam Bennett if they would actually drop the gloves. But you kind of you respect what he's doing there. And then the Bruins stars were their stars when it mattered most, and it was just a really good effort. And so that's my opening shift.
Yeah, it was funny seeing like reaction from fans online, whether Twitter, Facebook, wherever, Instagram. After Tuesday's win over the Panthers, it's whoa, holy crap, what a win, best win of the year. And I'm totally in agreement. Like, to me, it was the best win of the season. Then they lose to Tampa, and they stink. They are unmotivated, like all the same stuff. And it's like, guys, come, like, we can't yo-yo like this 24 hours apart. There's, I can't get worked up over the loss to the Lightning. Like, it's if I were commissioner of all sports, yeah,
wow, the power that you want.
NHL and NBA in particular, no back-to-backs ever. It wouldn't happen because you just get junk that second night 90% of the time in both sports. We only care about hockey, so I'll stick to that. But like, this is what like, it's not, especially after such a physical, emotional game like Florida. I'm sorry, if you were expecting them to give that same effort again the second night, I just don't think you have realistic expectations of like what a human body's capable of. Like, I don't want to make too many excuses for them, but it's a brutal schedule. Like, that, it wasn't gonna. It was just, it wasn't gonna happen.
First, there's so much there, Scott, because now I know you want to be the commissioner of all sports, but also like the emotional roller coaster you have to be on to get so hyped for the win against Florida and then be so down against Tampa. Like, it's obviously what you'd call it on the schedule is a scheduled loss because you're playing a really tough opponent when what you really expected to be an emotional game because of the circumstances of the playoffs last year and just how Florida plays. And to be able to come back and do that back-to-back nights was never really realistic, I guess. So it's not surprising they lose, but and it wasn't their best game, obviously. But if we want to just focus on the Florida game, because that was Brian's opening shift, it was the first 8 minutes I was concerned we were going to have the same issue as the last two games with and the practice that Montgomery ended up having the guys do sprints for, because the energy wasn't there. They give up the early goal. First 8 minutes or so were just not good. And then they get a power play. They start building, and all of a sudden they're leading in shots, and you see the confidence coming back, and things are starting to get physical. And so they did pick themselves up after getting punched really early with that goal against. And my question is, though, for you guys, we saw once again on this road trip, we saw Swayman win against Florida, and then we saw Ullmark come and play really well and lose against Tampa Bay. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on what we saw from goaltending.
I thought both goaltenders were strong in each of their respective games. There was one play in Tampa Bay where Ullmark went out and played the puck, and I was like, I'm getting flashbacks to Game 5, buddy. Can you learn your lesson and just stay in the net? But besides that, the goaltending was a non-issue for me in either game, which is good.
Yeah, I thought both played well. I had said going in that I would have liked to have seen Ullmark get the Florida game, which would have been a second straight start, just because I feel like Swayman's been getting the quote-unquote bigger games for a while now, and I thought Ullmark had been outplaying him. I would have liked to have seen Ullmark get the marquee game. Not that Tampa Bay's not. Like, obviously, that's a big game too, and probably in some ways could have ended up being a tougher game, given that it was the back-to-back and you're probably not expecting the best effort from the team in front of you. But I didn't think you really saw Tampa's best effort either. Jim Montgomery said that afterwards. Like, I didn't feel like they were peppering Ullmark all night or anything like that. Like, he had to make some good saves for sure, but they were coming. Tampa had been one of the hotter teams in the NHL, like, still is, but they're coming off a long West Coast trip. So even though they'd been off since Sunday, you always hear that cliche about first game back after a long road trip, and I thought you kind of saw that a little bit from them too. They had more in the tank than the Bruins did. Clearly, they had better legs in the third period. I thought that was really when you saw it catch up to the Bruins. Is they're down by a goal, you have a chance to push to tie it, and they just couldn't do it. I mean, they didn't have a single shot in goal in the last 7 minutes of the game. They pull their goalie, and once again, that 6-on-5 situations remain a struggle for them, really both ways. But they got nothing going with the extra attacker. Kucherov cherry picks and ends up with an empty net goal to seal it. So I thought that was really where you saw the Bruins. Like, they had hung in there most of the night. Tampa kind of let them hang around, but then they just didn't have enough to make that last push.
Yeah, and I'll extend that not from just the 6-on-5, but just with a man up. Like, that top unit on the power play didn't look great either. So, like, and Pasta talked about it after the game. He said, the power play hasn't been good. 6-on-5, we need to do much better than that. He said we didn't have many looks. 6-on-5, definitely something we have to practice. Be more patient, need to be confident entering the zone with speed on the 6-on-5 and on the power play. So you see similarities between how they were struggling to generate 6-on-5. And Pasta also mentioned that usually we're on the other side of a 6-on-5. Usually we're leading and defending a 6-on-5, which I think you could probably argue hasn't gone well for them either at different points this season. Gives you just another reason to practice it, right? Like, you have one unit that's the 6 and they're learning, and one unit that's the 5, and they, double whammy, work on that, because that is a situation in the playoffs that is very important, because we saw what happened in Game 7. But so I think if you guys want to take it from there, like, top power play unit in 6-on-5, what were your thoughts?
I mean, I thought they had looks. Well, as it pertains to the power play in Florida, I thought they had looks, and obviously Frederick's goal was a power play goal. Technically, was that the only power play goal they had all 2 games? Was that one?
I believe so. I'm just double checking real quick, but I think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they had looks against Florida, but and 6-on-5, it's just. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to be desired there, right? I mean, first of all, it starts with the face-off loss. I think the Bruins lost the face-off, and that's not great. You talk about Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle and how they've stepped up this year and really have mitigated the loss of Bergeron and Krejci. Well, the face-off circle is when it matters most. Those two in particular are going to have to really bear down, and face-offs are a 5-man job, right? Oftentimes there's a misconception. It's just the center versus center, but there's a lot of 50-50 battles in there that the wingers have to come in and help out on. But that's an area going forward where you have a big moment face off. Can Coyle and Zacha, can they bear down on the other, top center in that situation? And 6-on-5 as it carried on, McAvoy just barely gains the red line, gets it deep, and next thing you know, it's out. So I don't really know. It's hard to say I loved it. It was kind of a one and done. They didn't really set much up with it.
Also, but it worked, but bold strategy by Tampa to basically defend it like as a 6-on-4. I mean, Kucherov's not even close to being in the zone. Like, if the Bruins make a couple quick passes there and score, and Kucherov's hanging out at center ice, you're like, what the hell kind of strategy was that, guys? Credit to them for working, but little risk there too. I have a barking dog once again. No, but yeah, I mean, I thought the power play took a step forward on Tuesday. Like, I thought that top unit got good looks, and then you end up the goal kind of a hybrid unit as a couple guys have changed off, and Frederick comes on. Yeah, it definitely didn't look good Wednesday, but again, I don't really think any part of the Bruins game looked all that good Wednesday. So, it's disappointing though, because like that is a game where not that they had a ton of power play opportunities. I think they had 2, but you might need your top guys to break through when you're not generating much in other ways, or especially 5-on-5.
Yeah, and you want to see somebody like Brad Marchand just get a little bit more of generate a little bit better chances on the power play just because of where he is, and just trying to get his numbers and everything back up for him.
Yeah, and sorry, Scott, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I will say, I think I've liked that top unit a little more with Marchand net front and Zacha over on the elbow. In some ways, I think it's actually forced them to like have more movement, because Marchand's not just going to stay net front stationary. Like, he moves around. I think that forces other guys to move around, and it gives them different looks. So I've actually kind of liked that. I don't know if it lasts, but at least they haven't been as stationary as they were when it was like, okay, here's everyone's defined spots. McAvoy up top, Pasternak left elbow, Marchand right elbow, bumper, net front. And it's like everyone just stays there. And it's like, all right, most good penalty kills are going to be able to figure out how to defend that. So at least now there's some movement.
And I don't know about you guys, but power play aside, I just felt like I learned more about the Bruins and what needs to transpire going forward against Florida than I did Tampa Bay. There were more learning points. Like, for example, I learned affirmation that I just really think they found their third D pair in Peak and Wotherspoon, which kind of ties into Scott's opening shift a little bit too with the split in Tampa. But mainly what I learned about the Bruins was that it was wonderful to see their resolve. It was wonderful to see their pushback, their fight back. But as somebody who's watched the Bruins all year, we know that took a lot out of them to come out with the win that night. Like, it kind of, you could tell the Bruins were pushing all their chips in this game, but for Florida, it kind of seemed like another day at the office. And so, like, that's every game for them. They always play that way. They always play with that kind of intensity. And it just kind of made me like, when Jim Montgomery skated the Bruins, again, I said this before last episode before these two games, like, the Bruins, and I'm not saying that they feel this way. I'm just saying I hope they don't feel this way. There's a fine line between being proud of yourself for playing well, but not being satisfied. And I just hope that the Bruins don't just remember that skate session from Monty and the ridicule, and then feel better about themselves because they came out and played well on a regular season game against Florida. And that's great. But I hope they've learned against Florida on Tuesday that it's going to take that effort night in and night out in the spring. And I do think that adding a guy like Patrick Maroon to the lineup, he really helps balance it out a little bit, and with all those, between the whistles nonsense and policing the game amongst players. But I just hope that the Bruins learn, like, we got to bring that consistently.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away that, like, I thought Florida brought their best. I thought they were all in as well. I've seen them have plenty of off nights too. Like, they had some no-shows recently, a 4-0 loss to Carolina, 3-0 to Nashville. I think we always see them bring it against the Bruins because it's a game they get up for as well. And I think they were treating like that like a measuring stick game as well. So, I'm not going to take anything away from them. Like, I thought that was two really good teams bringing it that were really up for that game. So I give full credit to the Bruins like that. That they needed their best, and I thought they mostly got Florida's best.
Well,
too. So
and that's a good point, Scott. But that's kind of it, right? Like, that's exactly it. If they don't bring their best against a team that is capable of playing that well, bringing their best, it's going to be they're not going to have success, right? So maybe Florida no-shows a game against Carolina or Nashville, like all teams do in the regular season, but they won't no-show you. And the Bruins have seen what it takes to beat Florida. It takes the Bruins' best. And I think that it's not so much the like the between the whistles stuff. Like, Florida, while they might no-show certain games on the scoreboard, they always consistently they'll nip at your heels. They'll agitate you, whether it's Sam Bennett, Kachuk, Cousins, Lomberg, whomever, Montour. They all do it, and I just, that does take energy out of their opposition. And if the Bruins ever play Florida, they can bet their bottom dollar that like that's gonna be a part of that series. And look, they matched it. They matched it on Tuesday. I'm just saying, like, they learned this is what we have to do if we play Florida, because it's just the reality of the situation. If you play Toronto and then second round somehow you play, the Rangers, and you don't ever play Florida, it's a moot point. But if they ever end up playing Florida in the playoffs, there's two games at play. There's between the whistles, and then there's the nonsense, which Florida will do, and they get away with it. And so the Bruins are going to have to kind of match them a little bit tit for tat to an extent. And they did on Tuesday, but it's just affirmation.
Yeah, Kachuk plays like that every game. Like that's just him. He's a pain. And basically, you see the Bruins get to their next level emotionally. But with guys mixing it up, like you mentioned, Marchand and Lindholm, and there was plenty of times after the whistle where even like Charlie Coyle was dealing with someone, and there was a lot going on after the whistles, basically. But it feels like Florida is getting you to play their game when you're doing stuff like that. Because that's what they're used to, and they have it in their mind, like where the line is and where the penalties are going to come out of that and whatnot. And a guy like Lindholm isn't going to do that every game. We know that. And you don't want your captain getting punched in the face every game. Like, so it's a fine line, and it's where Pat Maroon definitely comes into play in a playoff series, because he's someone that probably shuts that down in between whistles or steps in instead of somebody that, maybe just is smaller or not experienced in a fight or, dealing with that kind of physicality, and it gets under your skin. We saw how annoying it was in a playoff series last year. And you could just tell from this one-off game that we saw on this road trip that that's exactly what the playoff series would look like again this year, which it's hard to argue like the Bruins are better prepared for it now than they would have been last year, because they had a way better roster last year. But maybe just learning from past mistakes and learning from last year's playoff sets them up a little bit better to deal with it this year. I don't know, but it's going to be a tough playoff series if that's what the Bruins draw, for sure. It was a close game, and there were definitely times where I didn't think that they were going to win it, and then they found a way to.
Yeah, you don't want Marchand getting punched in the face, but you do want them responding. Like I actually think it's a good thing. Like the Panthers dragged that out of them, and I think the Bruins are at their best when they're playing with emotion and intensity and responding the right way. I think they channeled that energy in a good direction and like played well, in the run of play, played physically, didn't get carried away. I know that, I think they got the extra penalty once or twice. Quite frankly, I didn't think it was deserved, but
beat you with the splash. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, like Witherspoon getting 2 when Kachuk kicks out a skate at him, like that was just dumb. But anyways, like I'm more worried about the Bruins if they get into, now look, they might not beat the Panthers, right? It might be an emotional, intense series, and the Panthers might still win it because they're just a really good hockey team. They're going to be tough to beat. But I almost worry more about the Bruins if they get into a series against a team that's not going to drag them out of that, where they might get caught sleepwalking a little bit, because I don't know that I trust them to bring that themselves and for them to be the team that raises the intensity level. Like Florida's going to raise it. What I'm encouraged by is that the Bruins, once they get dragged in, were able to raise it themselves and match that.
So that's a great point, and that's kind of, I think, the crux of what I was trying to articulate, but you just said it perfectly. Like, it seemed like it was a drag for the Bruins. It seemed like it was like so energy inducing for the Bruins to play that way. And it was almost like it took everything out of them to beat Florida in that one way. Whereas for Florida, the way Florida plays, it's more natural for them to play that type of game. Yes, Florida will have off nights, but the emotional engagement, Florida brings that all the time to an extent. Even if they're losing, they'll probably, Kachuk will turn his ass to somebody after a whistle and just kind of, poke at somebody. That's the problem though, Scott, is like, that's what I want this Bruins team to adopt going forward is like, don't be the team that has to have something dragged out of you. Be the team that takes the fight to somebody, no matter who you're playing. And I think that's a very important trait to have as a team. It's not just fighting. In fact, it's not really fighting at all. It's just like, be in the face of your opponent. Like, be hard on the forecheck, be hard on the back check. Like, let them know you're there after whistles. Just let them know you're there. And don't wait for Matthew.
Let them know you're there.
Don't wait for Matthew Tkachuk or Nick Cousins to piss you off to get to that level. Like, you should innately have that animosity towards your opponent all the time, especially in the playoffs. And I just think it's important for the Bruins to. Is it in their DNA as a group right now? Probably not. They're not the toughest Bruins team I've ever seen. But can you try to be for the next couple of months while you're trying to win a championship? Can you adopt that on the fly to the best that you can? Hopefully. I mean, I think, again, losing Milan Lucic as a hockey player, that was the role he was supposed to help out with this year, right? Like no one's gonna fuck with anybody on the team because Lucic will be there. That went away, and the Bruins have struggled. And then they get Pat Maroon, and we haven't seen Maroon play in a Bruins jersey, but the Bruins would benefit greatly by being a team that is proactive and no matter who you're playing, what night you're playing, you bring that energy, you bring that fight. It's what the 2011 Bruins did. It's what that whole era of Bruins did. Like, they were always willing and able, not just waiting for somebody to poke and pry them to like finally be like, all right, enough is enough. Like, and I think I would like to see that going forward. I think it's very important. I think it's why Florida is so successful.
Yeah, and I want to like push this forward to like what you want to see out of them the next. What is there? Is there only 9 games left now? Or is it 10?
8 games left.
Okay, so 8 games left. We don't expect that to be what they do every night, but obviously you want to see a percentage of those games be like that, and to look at what they have left on their schedule. Carolina is another team you probably want to see them play like that against. You have Carolina twice in April, and then you have Florida again. So like we're talking about, they have Tuesday they have Nashville, Thursday they have Carolina, and then Saturday they're at home against Florida. So you're gonna be back in the Garden, but you're gonna probably face a similar challenge of dealing with the kind of antics that Florida brings. And when I want to read something that Swayman said after that Florida game, he said, last nine games will be hard, and winning them gives a boatload of confidence. So basically, you need to be gaining your confidence over this last stretch of 8 games by doing those things right, like you saw in Florida with the physicality, just trying to put things together before the playoffs start.
Absolutely. I mean, again, for me, attention to detail, defensive commitment, buying in, being a hard team to penetrate the inside ice. That's very important. Protecting your net, winning board battles, being aggressive on the forecheck and hard on the back check. Those little things, that all matters. And then obviously I don't expect Hampus Lindholm to fight every game, but little things, I feel it. Seriously, little things go a long way. Like when I watch the Bruins play Florida or teams like that just kind of a very easy way to get under a team's skin, and it has nothing to do with fighting, but it kind of just, what'd you say, Scott? Let them know you're there. Like say the puck is tied up by the other goalie, right? Instead of just like flying by, and whatever, like reading signs in the stands, like just kind of linger, like just don't snow the goalie, just kind of like linger and like I feel like that bothers teams. It annoys them. Do you guys know what I'm saying? Like if you watch you also watch Matthew Tkachuk or Sam Bennett, like Swayman will tie it up, and you just see Tkachuk just kind of, he doesn't do anything wrong, right? No penalty, nothing, but he just kind of like lingers, and like maybe he'll do like a little, very tiny little like. It's gamesmanship. It does cause emotion. It gets your opponent frustrated, and again, like little things, just be engaged, in all facets of the game. That's just what I want to see heading into the playoffs.
I also think like as you say that, I'm thinking like Brad Marchand in particular is, he's going to do that in the playoffs. Like, he's going to bring out, maybe not all the old antics, but a lot of them that I think get put away a little bit in the regular season now that he's older, now that he's a captain. He's not going to do that stuff every night, but like, you better believe like he'll do it in the playoffs. So obviously, yes, you need other guys to do it as well, but he does kind of set the tone that way. There are a couple other positives I wanted to highlight. Well, individually, David Pasternak's physicality the last two games. The first goal in Florida, he doesn't get a point on it, but he has the reverse hit on Tkachuk in the corner, knocks him down, and that gets that play started. Leads to a goal. Another goal he doesn't get a point on, but Danton Heinen's goal in Tampa starts with Pasternak on the forecheck, forces an errant pass, a turnover that Zacha collects and sets up Heinen. So I thought you saw, again, understanding, yes, there are also power play struggles, and he's part of that, but I thought you saw really engaged Pasternak these two games that brought his A game. Charlie McAvoy continues to shoot more. That's been an encouraging development the last 3 games after, felt like weeks of talking about McAvoy not being involved enough, not having a shot mentality. He went a stretch where he had 2 total shots on goal in 6 games. Gonna kill this dog. But a great shot on his goal on Tuesday.
No, that's not what I say to Melvin when Melvin barks. I'm just gonna say, I just go,
it's not my dog, so
yeah.
But yeah, those 2 in particular, like I thought, have really turned it up, and those are obviously guys who you rely on as alternate captains and as star players, your 2 highest paid players.
Yeah, and Pasta got his 100th point on this road trip, so he's still contributing, obviously, just so consistent with bringing his offense, hence how he has so many points this season, and just reaching another milestone. And he just keeps climbing the Bruins, up the Bruins records and passing different players who had great careers with Boston in terms of his points and goals. And he's somebody that you need to keep seeing that from, obviously, in the final stretch. When it comes to the McAvoy thing, he looks like his mentality has shifted back to getting shots through, like trying to find that lane to shoot, trying to be more offensive rather than thinking about like, okay, obviously you want to be pinching at the right time and you want to be keeping pucks in and you want to be finding the right pass. But I think he had kind of not prioritized okay, why don't I look for a shot here? Kind of thought process. And when you see him get that shot through, it moves defenders. Pucks come back out off the pads quick on a hard point shot like that, or bounce off anything out in front, and you have a chance for someone else to grab it and put it in, or you have a chance to, like we saw him actually sniping goals, like that shot from the right dot was just a perfectly placed shot. And it was the right time to shoot. He had plenty of space. So it's nice to see him finding those openings, like getting open without the puck, and going into places where he can find a lane to shoot, and good things have happened from him doing that. So it's kind of crazy. Like I feel like Coach only had to say it to him one time and he did it. So that's great. Like the adjustment came very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. There's another Charlie on the Bruins, I think, that could probably have a better shot first mentality, which was, Charlie Coyle. I also think Marchand could have shot that. He's right in the slot. it's easy to watch that play on TV and be like, Coyle, shoot the puck. But Marchand was the player with the best chance to shoot there, and he didn't. But still, 3-on-1, you got to get a shot. But yes, Bridget, Charlie McAvoy definitely shot first mentality the last few games in particular. Message received, apparently. So
keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Keep doing it. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, I think the problem is with both Charlies is that, you can tell them and they'll start doing it again, but at some point it'll trail off and then you're going to have to tell them again. So, like, it just isn't natural for either of them. I think they are both pass first, always looking to pass by nature, but they're both so much more effective when they're looking to shoot. So, yeah, hopefully they're both in that mindset for the playoffs.
So, Scott, I wanted to get back to your opening shift just a little bit more to expand upon that. And I thought that, look, we just mentioned it was their best win of the season, certainly one of them against Florida. And I thought that the Andrew Peeke, Parker Wotherspoon third D pair, that's a D pair that I want to see the Bruins ice come playoffs. I thought they play simple, they play hard, and they're just not easy to play against. And they compete. They really compete. And they get split up for the second game against the Lightning, and it's because Brandon Carlo and Hampus Lindholm, they haven't been playing phenomenal. Carlo more so to me. I think they tied the game 1-1 in Florida, and he goes back for a puck retrieval, and he has all the time in the world, and passes it to nobody off the boards, he did pass it to somebody. It was Florida, and it's like you just tied the game, and you've been in the league now for what, 7-8 NHL seasons, maybe more, and you're supposed to be a shutdown defenseman for this Bruins team, and that's just a play. It's rudimentary, and it can't happen, and it leads to a goal against Tampa Bay. Nick Paul just beats him with the backhand pass, and he overcommits, and then it leads to the first Tampa Bay goal. So I think it's fair to say the Bruins need a hell of a lot more out of Brandon Carlo come playoffs. But in any event, Scott, not to hijack your opening shift, so I want to give the floor back to you and discuss those two defensemen and why they got split up.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's definitely a big part of it. Is I think I think Carlo's play has regressed a bit for probably a few weeks now. I also think Lindholm, he had a little minor injury. He came back from that strong for a couple games, and then I think his play has tailed off a little bit recently. So, yeah, maybe it's a little bit of a wake-up call to both those guys. I do think that there is also an element of like wanting to see different pairs together just in case something happens, right? Like in case Lindholm or Carlo goes down, but I just feel like you're gonna have some big adjustments to make if that happens in the playoffs anyways. Like I don't know that you really need to be testing stuff out now. Again, I guess you can because you're gonna make the playoffs and you know what you have in Lindholm, Carlo when they're playing well. But yeah, it's just a little odd. And like you said, especially coming off a game where Wotherspoon and Peeke looked so good together against Florida, you'd think, maybe give that another game and like let that continue to build. Nonetheless, I'm with you. Like, I think that would be their third pairing. If game one were tonight, I imagine that's how they're starting. We've seen other guys, we saw Shattenkirk have a good game playing on his left side, but I don't think that's their first choice. So I imagine it would be Wotherspoon and Peeke together. And you're right. Like keeping it simple, physical, competing hard. One thing with Peeke I want to see him get better at is making faster decisions on the breakout. He circles back a lot, and that is not part of what the Bruins want to do on the breakout. I know there's times it's necessary. There's times you just have to regroup instead of forcing a pass. But he regroups to the point sometimes where it then invites trouble because you allow someone to then close on you. So I do think he needs to make some quicker decisions with the puck. Like I think it was the Florida game. There was one specific breakout where it looked like he had a passing lane to the weak side defenseman, making that the Bruins use a lot, weak side defenseman rounds up into the neutral zone on the opposite side. And I think he had that passing lane, but he hesitated. He didn't seem totally sure of himself. And then he circled back, and all of a sudden Florida had two guys coming after him. And because his D partner had already started the rush, it was a 2-on-1. I think he eventually just rimmed it around, and then there was a battle, and the Bruins might have even won control. But it was you kind of just played yourself into trouble because you didn't take the pass when it was there immediately.
I'm okay with him not making a stupid pass though. If it's not there, I know what you're saying because he slows the game down and brings it back, and I noticed he definitely has a different style of breaking things out than the guys like somebody like Lindholm or Grzelcyk or but sometimes you need to just wait and try to get let a line change finish, try to get a pass up to somebody that just hopped on the ice or there's definitely times when it's not a bad thing to do, right? But you're saying just don't do it too much, I guess is kind of what you're saying.
But if you circle back into traffic like you did on the one specific play I'm talking about, then that is the dumb play. That becomes the dumb play.
That's one specific play though. I feel like
it's happened more than once though.
I feel like I've seen him do it when he needed to at times as well. But this is just a nitpicky thing. It's not. This isn't really a huge thing. But when we were talking before we started recording about the Wotherspoon Peak pair, and the changes that they went away from that and they split Carlo and Lindholm up. Basically, what I said to you guys was it was a failed experiment. I didn't like how it looked. I thought that the chemistry was not there with the pairs that they had, and not obviously they didn't switch everyone up, but the pairs that they did have with Lindholm and Peak and Wotherspoon and Carlo just looked out of whack, and they didn't impress me, and we talked about this as well too. It wasn't, I know you're trying to get Carlo and Lindholm going or what have you, but it just felt like we kind of should have probably known what the result was going to be before it even happened, that those two pairs were probably not going to have a whole lot of success. I'm okay with trying things, but it didn't seem like maybe the right game to try it. And it kind of felt like the result that was expected. You're playing guys together that I'm not sure if they ever played together before, except on when line changes weren't complete. And maybe some special team stuff, but yeah, it was a failed experiment if that's what it was. And you still we see Lohrei not coming again. Shattenkirk also out. At some point, we talked about this, what's the benefit of having Lohrei not getting the reps? He could maybe be getting reps in Providence that might be beneficial to him, but yeah, that's its own topic.
Well, I'm glad you bring it up because you just reminded me indirectly of something that I saw this week. And not only do the Bruins have to redeem themselves as players this postseason, Jim Montgomery and the coaching staff have to redeem themselves as well, because players play 100%, and it's completely unacceptable, the collapse that they had last year against Florida. But I was reminded of something in Game 5 I completely forgot about, and it just reminded me of Monty, keep it stupid simple. Stop overthinking everything. Just stop changing things. Just let things breathe, especially if they are proven that they work. Not that Wotherspoon Peak has proven that, but they look good. But Game 5 against Florida last year, Bruins are up in that series 3-1. They do so without Patrice Bergeron in the lineup. He comes back into the lineup for Game 5. You know what line Brad Marchand was on that game? Brad Marchand on a depth chart was on the 3rd line with Charlie Coyle and Nick Foligno. Look, a lot went wrong to lose that series, but it's like that is just a reminder of like don't overthink things. And we don't have to go into it, but going forward, Monty needs to stop with the unnecessary tinkering. Unnecessary being the key word. If it's necessary, fine. But I don't know. I was watching those highlights from that game, and like in the very beginning, it flashed like the faces on top of the screen of the lines, and I'm like, Bertuzzi, Bergeron, DeBrusk, Marchand, Coyle, Foligno. Like, what was Monty doing? What was he doing? You're up 3-1, and anyway, don't need to revisit it, but it's just a reminder of like just not just the players, but the coaches have to improve this year too. And I think part of that improvement is just not overcomplicating personnel decisions.
I mean, yeah. I think we all agree. That's
I was just I was looking up. So it was Game 6, what I was thinking of, but when he took Grzelcyk out and put Clifton back in, and it was like Clifton had played very poorly games 1 and 2, and then bringing Grzelcyk in was part of what really helped the transition game get going. Games 3 and 4 down in Florida. And then after one loss in Game 5, you revert back and it doesn't work again. So sort of along those same lines of like, don't overreact.
And again, like we've been watching Coyle and Marchand for almost an entire regular season at this point. So it's my point's kind of diluted because we're used to hearing those names together. But think back to last spring, Marchand and Coyle being on a line together was unheard of. It was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it was not the norm last year. That's for sure.
So putting Peak and Lindholm and Wotherspoon and Carlo, like I know it was one game and he was probably trying to wake up Carlo and Lindholm, but it just reminded me of like some of the shortcomings last year, which is overthinking things. It's like, just please just stop with that shit.
Well, and along the same lines though, but just on the same topic while we're here, it seems like the one pairing now that he's like locked into is Grzelcyk and McAvoy. And I just find it curious, he's said, if you play well, you stay in the lineup. If you struggle, you might come out. Well, I don't know what you guys thought of Matt Grzelcyk's game Wednesday night, but I thought he didn't look very good. Again, far from alone on the team. But do you change up that pairing at some point? Whether it's giving Lohrei a look there, whether it's maybe you move Lindholm up there for a game, like I mentioned earlier. Load him up with McAvoy. I know that they use that line in offensive zone situations at times, Lindholm and McAvoy together. But maybe for a full game, give them 15 to 20 minutes together.
Are you talking about regular season or playoffs? Are you saying try it now and then?
Yeah, I'm talking like right now while he's apparently experimenting on defense.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I've said it frequently. Like I prefer to see Lohrei there. I think his ceiling's higher, and I think he gets I think McAvoy playing on his toes is helpful. But it's like, but again, they don't help themselves. Like they don't help they help my argument because against Florida, they get scored out in the first 30 seconds, and it's like that's not what a top pair should be doing in that type of game.
But we also talked about how who does McAvoy play best with, like that frees him up offensively, and he's been looking better offensively. It's been Grzelcyk that's been out there with him. He's not having to focus too much on cleaning up some of Lohrai's mistakes or like just having to worry about a rookie defenseman to try to. Yeah, it's a mental thing, I think.
Yeah, but he's also got to worry about Matt Grzelcyk getting out muscled every time there's a one-on-one battle in their D zone.
But I think he trusts him. Like I think if you're talking about like mentally, I think he just trusts Grzelcyk's game more and doesn't feel like he feels like he can play his game more when he's out there with Grzelcyk. That's my counter to that. So that's how I've been looking at it. But
Yeah, I don't totally disagree. And like they're best buddies. Like I'm sure he prefers to play with him from a personal standpoint, but I don't know. I just I haven't seen them be dominant enough where it's like not even close, not even close. And besides the last couple of games, I think people are for some reason, and I don't mean to come at the two of you, but like I feel like Lorai's not getting enough credit for his offensive skill set and what he opens up in the ozone and in transition. Like Grzelcyk he's not been great at that. And you can sit there and say he helps McAvoy play the safest game. I don't want McAvoy playing safe. I want Charlie McAvoy playing on his toes and being a menace. And I don't know, man. I think there's a level of complacency when when McAvoy's playing with Grzelcyk, and I can't help but feel that way. And I think that like I don't think it's the end of the world. It's not going to make or break the Bruins' chances this year, Grzelcyk versus Lorai. But like I don't know. I feel like people oftentimes say, well, Lorai's a rookie and he makes mistakes, but it's not talked about enough the plays that he does make.
I would still like to see him rotated in for sure before the end of the regular season. He hasn't played on the Florida trip, so we haven't seen him in a little bit. But yeah, you want to see him against a good team too. You want to probably get him into one of those Carolina games if you really are serious about like prepping him for the playoffs. I don't know what the matchup would be like. Would you go to him for that Florida game? I don't see a huge reason why not to, but I feel like the next Florida game, you really want to roll out what you think is going to be your playoff lineup.
Yeah, I think the problem with Lorai, like I'll give him credit offensively. Absolutely. He's probably, along with McAvoy, the most creative offensive defenseman the Bruins have. The issue is that the defense does at times still outweigh the offense. He's the only Bruins defenseman who's been on the ice for more goals against than goals for this season. And that's happened while he gets a ton of offensive zone starts. Mm-hmm. They don't exactly give him the toughest assignments. And it's not just bad luck. Like, even if you dive deeper into the analytics at like expected goals for, which takes into account, chances, quality of chances, all that. Out of 10 Bruins defensemen who have played this season, he's 9th, 46.6%. Only Ian Mitchell is worse. So,
remember him? That feels like seasons ago he was playing for the Bruins.
So, like, the reality is the Bruins are still giving up more chances against when Lorai's on the ice than they're getting, even though individually he does create chances.
So here's my question. Am I is it a Brian problem? Because I feel like I'll admit I feel like I'm fighting uphill to argue for Lorai because the defensive metrics might not be astonishing, but I just don't trust Grzelcyk anymore in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't think it's just you, Brian. I think you're in the group of people that they just don't see the upside of Grzelcyk compared to the upside of Lorai, right? Like the whole group of people that have been against Grzelcyk or not trusting Grzelcyk. Like, I'm not saying that's why you're in this group, but there is a group of people that agree with you for that reason.
But I also want to clarify, like I like him as a player. I do. Like he's a great skater. He's smart. I think he bails the Bruins out of trouble oftentimes with his decision making and his puck retrievals and his skating ability. I like him as a player, and I think the biggest reason the Bruins lost the Stanley Cup in 2019 was because Oscar Sundqvist gave Matt Grzelcyk a concussion, and the Bruins against that Blues team, they lost a big advantage, which was their transition over St. Louis's to transition. I've always liked Matt Grzelcyk, but part of it is because I really like the size and the skating and the upside of Lorai, and I don't like penalizing a player for their youth because we haven't seen him in the playoffs, but I hear the analytics Scott just said. it's partly the upside on Lohrei, and it's partly I've just seen Grzelcyk year in and year out get caved in on forechecking, and it puts more strain on McAvoy because now he's defending more, and he's now susceptible to more body checks, and again, it could be me. It's this. I feel like a lot of fans that don't want Grzelcyk in there hate him as a player. That's not the case with me. I've seen it with him, and I look at who they're playing in the playoffs: Florida, Carolina. Like I can see it already happening. So
yeah, yep. I think the reality is something we've believed or known to be true all season, which is, if we're really going to be honest about it, they're a top 4 defenseman short. Like neither Grzelcyk nor Lohrei is, to me, an ideal partner for Charlie McAvoy in the playoffs. Hampus Lindholm probably would be, but then you don't have an ideal partner for Brandon Carlos. So it all comes back to that. And, we think they poked around. They were linked to Noah Hannafin for how long? Like, I think it's something they're going to explore in the offseason, but they couldn't find something that worked in season or before the season. And, in my mind, like, maybe there's a time where you hoped Lohrei might get there this season. I don't think he's there. Maybe if you gave him a longer runway, let him play through more mistakes, like, you can second guess that if you want. I don't know that it would have made a huge difference, but ultimately it just comes back to what I think is kind of just a foundational truth of this team, which is they have 3 top 4 defensemen. They're not alone, by the way. There's other playoff teams that don't have 4 legitimate top 4 guys, but in a perfect world, you would.
So what about Grzelcyk and Carlo?
They haven't used it a ton this season. I don't think it's looked good when they have.
That 2019 Cup run was when it was McAvoy and Chara. Was it Carlo and Krug or Carlo and Grzelcyk?
He was with Krug.
Okay.
And then it was like Grzelcyk, Miller usually, I think.
Okay. All right. Yeah, they are top 4 guys short. I guess there's pros and cons to Lohrei and or Grzelcyk, and it's just a matter of which one are you willing to gamble on.
And then they have like 5 bottom pair guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Good. Plenty of those. But anyway, guys, we talked a lot about the Bruins. I promised we were going to talk a little bit about college hockey, so I want to just pay that off at the end here. Because first of all, look, got all my UMass gear on. Not going to the game. All my college friends who I normally go with are working because, 2 p.m. on a Thursday, not the most ideal time for a hockey game to drive out to Springfield. So I would have loved to go, but not going to happen. Maybe if they win somehow. I'm not hugely hopeful for them this year. I'm pretty sure my friends would have taken the time out of work if we thought that they were close to what they, to making a run. But after what I saw in the Hockey East tournament, a little bit discouraged about their chances of winning. I don't think they're going to beat BC or BU if they run into those teams. And it's like Denver and so there's a lot of teams better than them. Anyway, that game is probably, by the time I post this, about to start. But we got a question from...
I was going to say, people got to watch this on YouTube fast because Bridget's UMass getup might be outdated pretty quickly.
It might be. It's okay. So we had a question from Chip.
I'm also not going to BU's game, by the way, because UMass made the tournament. BU got shipped out to Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Yes. Yeah, that was tough. That's I don't know many people that are going, though. I know Belle Fraser is going. Was it Boston Hockey Blog?
Yeah, Daily Free Press coverage team. They're out there.
Yep. So she's great. She covers the Bruins with us. That's her connection to us. But they got like this GoFundMe and they raised all this money and now they're out there. So yeah, we had a few questions about college hockey. This one from Chip said, so the great state of Michigan has 4 teams qualified for this year out of 16. 3 of 4 have been placed in Maryland Heights, Missouri. Great place for hockey, which I'm not sure even has a rink. This kind of sucks because Michigan State has won the Big Ten regular season and Big Ten tournament. And now to make the Frozen Four, they may need to beat Michigan teams to get there. Basically, you're not going to see all the Michigan teams get a chance to make the Frozen Four, which is in Michigan. So basically the question is why? Scott, you can handle this one.
Yeah, so the bracket is based off the pairwise ratings, which are a mathematical formula used to determine the strongest teams, and then they just basically 1 through 16 as much as possible. They try to stick to 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15, and on. And then you have to make adjustments for location, like UMass has to be in Springfield because they're hosting that regional. You can't face a team from your own conference. So in the case of this, 3 Michigan teams being there, Michigan State faces Western Michigan in the first round. That can happen because they're not in the same conference. So, but what's even more interesting here, so he mentions, what is it? Maryland Heights, right? Town just outside St. Louis. Have you seen how much of a disaster this regional is going to be?
No.
So the rink holds 2,500, and you have North Dakota there, who has the best fan base in college hockey. North Dakota alone was looking for 7,500 tickets. On the secondary market right now, tickets for that regional are going for over $1,000. It is I don't understand how that rink got a regional in the first place. I'm like, how are we putting it in a 20? That'd be like having it at Lawler Arena at Merrimack.
Hey, take it easy.
Actually, Lawler might have more seats than that.
I like both of those rinks, but you're not putting an NCAA regional there.
Just think about it. Like, to put it in terms of that people might understand size-wise, a Gannis fits over 7,000. So if you've ever been to a Gannis and then try to
6,500,
6,500. I thought it was 7, but you probably would know better than myself.
The Hallenberg.
But anyway, you can tell that like so many fewer seats than a Gannis. And it's so stupid. It's stupid. Playing in Missouri and playing where nobody can get in, it's dumb. At least Springfield has that's a full size hockey rink. And Providence obviously that's where the Providence Bruins play. So plenty of seats there. Great. Those seats were still kind of expensive, but I might go to the Sunday game if it's Quinnipiac, BC, because I have a bunch of Quinnipiac fan friends and a bunch of BC fan friends. So, and the other question we got from the mailbag about college hockey was from Kim. She said, what teams do you think will be in the Frozen Four, regardless if BC wins it all? Do you think Gauthier is gone and will play for the Ducks next year? I just want to stop there because there was more to this question. Gauthier already said he's going to play for the Ducks next year. Right when he got traded, he did an interview with some of the Anaheim media. My friend Alexis interviewed him right after he got traded from the Flyers to the Ducks, and he on that podcast said he will be joining Anaheim next season. So this is going to be his last year at BC. For sure. And then so the rest of the questions, do you think Smith, Leonard, Perreault will be back for BC one more year, or will they go pro? And the same question for Celebrini. Scott, you can handle the Celebrini one because this is your guy. Great, one of the best BU players that they've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I think all those guys are probably ready to turn pro. I guess it just depends on the team that drafts them. Are they so far away that they're okay with them going back for another year? But, just being completely honest, like on any of the BC guys, whether it's Perreault, Smith, Leonard, or Celebrini at BU, I don't know how much more they can learn and grow at the college level. Obviously, I believe in college hockey. I believe it's a great place to develop. But I mean, those guys are absolutely dominating, like game in, game out this year. And if you give them another year, like they're only going to dominate even more. So,
I mean, selfishly, I want them all to come back because that makes my life easier. Because I'm broadcasting these games, and the more entertaining the hockey is, the easier my job is. And they're. I mean, there's no question they're NHL ready.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good news is they both have more of those guys coming. BU has Cole Yzerman, who's probably going to be a top 5 pick this summer. BC has James Hagens, who's going to be the number 1 pick in 2025. So more elite talent right behind them.
Just watching Brian's face, he's like,
"Oh, sorry." No,
he's ordering lunch online.
No, it was a work email that came in.
I also think like if BC doesn't win, do they try does that freshman line try to run it back as sophomores? If it's up to them to choose, if their teams like you can either develop one more year, like we don't need you yet, which could easily be the case. Will Smith is not that Will Smith is an incredible hockey player from what we've gotten to see. Celebrini, I think it depends who he gets drafted by, which we don't know yet. So
did you guys give quick picks or no? I mean,
BC is my pick.
Well, how bold of you! Bold.
Listen, I've watched them play so many times. It's and I've watched and broadcast so much college hockey this year that it just makes so much sense to me from what I've watched with my own eyes. I'm not like jumping off of anyone's it's not a hot take at all because they're so good. But there's a reason why they're favorites, and it's because they're dominant.
I mean, gotta go.
They're not just
BUBC, right? It has to be BUBC.
I think so. I think realistically, like the 4 number 1 team. I mean, I guess this is why they're the number 1 seeds. Should advance. So that's BC, BU, Michigan State, Denver. The one upset in there I could see is Denver, not a great 5-5 team and hasn't had great goaltending most of the season. The way that Maine played against BU in the hockey semis, they've been a really good 5-5 team all year. Like Maine could knock them off in the second round out in Springfield. But yeah, I think it's probably going to be BC, BU, and I'd love to be a homer, but if I'm given an actual honest pick, BC has probably the best college hockey team I've seen.
Yeah.
In my time following it, I was 4 years old when Maine, that 93 team lost one game with Jim Montgomery and Paul Correa. So I'm not going to pretend I remember that team.
Yeah. We hear about it.
As in like the last 20 years.
Yeah.
The lore.
Yeah, I would say like in the last 20 years, this BC team is more loaded than any I've seen.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Maine. I wanted to give them a quick shout out for being in the tournament. Do you recall the last time that they were in the national tournament?
2012.
Yeah.
2012.
So that's 11 years ago.
It's funny, like growing up, I feel like it was always
good math, Bridget. 12 years ago.
Growing up, I feel like in Hockey East, like the Hockey East powers year in and year out were BC, BU, Maine, and UNH. Like those teams were always there, and so it's kind of vintage to see at least 3 or 4 of them in the same tournament. Pretty cool.
Yeah, well, when I was at UMass, they sucked and they never made the tournament, and then all of a sudden they were good, and they're back in the tournament this year. I don't think they have too much of a chance of. I mean, even if they somehow get out of the regional, like that, beating BU and BC is really not an
any
easy
given
task.
Sunday
or Thursday, because I'm playing Denver today, but yeah, no, I could see Maine upsetting Denver because I broadcast a Providence College Denver game earlier this season that PC won, and Denver didn't particularly impress me in that game. And now, was that one of their worst games of the year? I mean, probably that they weren't playing like their best hockey at that point, but I could see an upset with Maine being like the more physical. Like Maine plays with a lot of passion, so I could see that being an upset out of the Springfield regional.
And that's basically going to be like a home game for them. Their fans are going to pack that building just like they did the Garden on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a Hockey East regional championship game if somehow UMass wins and Maine wins. Could be a nice Hockey East matchup there. And then if it's BC, Quinnipiac, and Providence, that's a nice New England matchup. Like we get some good New England teams in, and obviously Quinnipiac trying to defend the title, though they're not as good this year as they were last year.
But still, for Quinnipiac, some of the bigger college free agent names to watch there: Colin Graff and Jacob Quillen. Quillen scored the overtime winner in the national title game last year.
Wasn't he the player of the year, ECAC player of the year this year, or something like that?
I think Graff was.
Oh, Graff. Okay. Quillen won another award as well. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, no, that they're still a good team. Like a Quinnipiac BC game is going to be fun. I'm definitely, if that's the matchup, I'm going.
And Quillen was invited to Bruins development camp either last summer or maybe the summer before. So certainly someone the Bruins have had their eye on in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, lots of hockey to look forward to and watch, including the NCAA tournament and Bruins' next game against the Capitals. So I believe this is a good place to wrap up, guys. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Go you.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you soon. Hey, guys. Thanks for watching this Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.